The year is 2009. You're all excited because you convinced your parents that the mature rating on this super cool RPG is just because there's a little blood. And the ESRB totally over-exaggerates. Yeah, they had to flash their ID at the local GameStop, but they bought you Dragon Age Origins and did a little handoff so you could hold it in the backseat of the car. Or maybe that's just me. You might have gotten the whole series from a recent Steam sale. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Now Origins is fully installed. You press new game, load up, and get this quote for a solid 20 seconds. What does this mean? Well, obviously some context can be drawn from the rest of the cinematic that plays out, voiced by our lovely friend Duncan. But even Duncan's words are a bunch of gobbledygook. Chantry, Darkspawn. Even if you've played the game before, there is so much more to these words than you may know. This is the lore behind the Dragon Age Origins introduction. Hi guys, Savvy here. Just a disclaimer, I wrote this video before the fourth game came out, and now it's out, and it is a lot more different than I expected. Very different from where a lot of things go in the original trilogy. But if you like Dragon Age content like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Let's start with the origin of this reference. Where is it from? Keep in mind, as soon as you start the game, you are in the Dragon Age universe. Every quote and reference is within this role-playing world that is centered on the continent of Thedas. There may be other continents out there, but Thedas is what we know and have maps of for our Dragon Age journey. Quick fun fact for you. Thedas was a placeholder name during development they intended to replace. It's an acronym that stands for the Dragon Age setting, and Dragon Age Origins is specifically set in Ferelden, right over here. Back to the quote in question, a canticle is a hymn or a psalm. So we gotta work backwards here because canticles make up the religious book called the Chant of Light, often shortened as the Chant throughout the games. The Chant of Light is a collection of religious texts taught by the Chantry, and the Chantry is the most common religion in Thedas, primarily oriented toward humans. Making sense so far? Okay, let's keep going. Threnodies, referenced in our intro quote, is one of 4 canticles in the original Chant of Light. And if you're like me, you might have mistaken Threnodies as the name of a person. It's totally normal. It does sound like a cool name in my opinion. However, a threnody is a song or poem of mourning. So this section of the Chant of Light is basically a collection of depressing and scary poems about mankind. It's foremost the Chantry's explanation to the people about how this world came to be and how man has fallen since. To complete the context of the intro passage, this 8 marks the stanza, almost like a chapter, while the 13 marks the verse, much like how someone would refer to a verse from the Bible or the Quran in real life. Okay, take a moment to breathe because that was the easy half of explaining this deceptively simple quote. There's kind of a lot of lore packed into this verse, and I'm just giving you an overview on what's referenced throughout the Dragon Age series. Now that you have the origins, let's dive into the text. This Threnodies verse talks about the Golden City. What is that? Well, and stay with me here. There are 2 planes of existence in the Dragon Age world, the Fade and the physical world, the 2 of which are separated by the Veil. According to the Chantry, the Maker created the Fade first, along with its inhabitants called his firstborn, or, as you'll find in your adventures, spirits. Later, he birthed the physical world and his secondborn, humans, elves, etc., based on his displeasure and lessons learned from creating the Fade. Again, there's a lot here, but let's talk about the Fade first.
This is nerve-wracking. It's a lot. But this is also what you came here for.
The Fade is a metaphysical world home to spirits and made up of ether and lyrium, a substance of creation that boosts magical power and mana. Its lands cannot truly be pinned down because it is an ever-changing maze, like those damn staircases at Hogwarts. It's where the physical world's inhabitants go when they dream, and therefore often shows whatever it wants in a nightmarish haze. Except for dwarves. They don't dream and don't have magic. It's largely believed dwarves were not birthed from the Maker. There are extenuating circumstances, and they could still end up in the Fade for other reasons, but that's neither here nor there. You just need to know that the Fade is a real place in this game world. The Chantry may be the human's primary religion, but all races in Thedas acknowledge the Fade's existence. Some groups have other names, such as elves calling it the Beyond. You may ask, how is any of this important? Fair.
Context is important.
The Golden City was the metropolis of the Fade. It was also considered the heart of heaven. 395 years prior to the creation of the Chantry, the Golden City was corrupted and turned into the Black City, an act that impacted all of Thedas. Now don't worry, I can still hear you. How did the Golden City become blackened, as Threnodies mentions?
Tell me how!
Well, I'm glad you asked. We're going to stick to how the Chantry explains things for the purposes of this video. You see, the Golden City was once where the people of Thedas would go when they died. All was well for a time, but it seemed to some spirits that the Maker played favorites, and it was always in favor to his second-born children. The stronger spirits began whispering sweet nothings to the above-ground children, and then lying that they were in fact the creators and to be worshipped.
Worship me!
Not the Maker. And those dumb idiots believed them.
Yes, that's right. I stopped you to tell you that I'm an idiot.
The second-born beings started to summon these spirits across the Veil. The spirits took the form of dragons, triumphant with their success, and were named the Old Gods. This is referred to as the original sin by the Chantry. The Maker abandoned the Golden City when the Doshians started to worship these dragons instead of him. And through the Maker's wrath, the Old Gods were imprisoned deep underground to slumber eternally. Or so the Maker intended. For the intents of the Chantry, the importance of this story is to understand how the Maker's favorite children disappointed him in a different way than his firstborn. His first children possessed as much power as himself, but lacked imagination and drive. Though they could create, they had no urge to do so because they are soulless. His second children were given the gift of ingenuity, but they ultimately created sin by turning to the Old Gods. The Maker felt abandoned, and therefore abandoned his children. Now, what the Old Gods truly are is something still being explored across the game series. While the Chantry preaches they were spirits corrupted by their jealousy of the living and the physical world, scholars of Thedas mostly agree that they were real dragons. The Qunari, as the outsiders to Thedas, have in their scripture, the old gods were like unto dragons, as the first human kings were like unto ordinary men. Many scholars even think that dragons, including the old gods, simply need to hibernate, suggesting there was no wrath enacted by the Maker at all. But as fun as all the legends are, we must get back to our new favorite verse. That story was the first sin, or the original sin, as I said earlier. You smart students can already see this coming, because if there is a first sin, it'd be pretty logical to say there is a second. And you'd be right. The second sin is what occurs in the first line of our introductory verse. Can you feel it? We're in the home stretch. Interestingly, the Canticle of Threnodies is the most agreed upon knowledge of the story I'm about to tell, even outside of the Chantry religion. I should clarify at this point that the Chantry in Thedas is a divided one, and the second sin is the most divisive story point of the entire series within the world of Thedas. The Orlesian Chantry is who we primarily interact with in Dragon Age Origins, which is why a lot of the lore I'm explaining is from their perspective. The other splinter is called the Imperial Chantry. That is the primary religion of the current Tevinter Imperium, the oldest surviving country in Thedas, and who the primary old god worshippers were in the original sin. The Tevinter Imperium is explored with more depth in the third game of the series, also leading into the fourth game, which is supposed to be set there. The Orlesian Chantry preaches that 7 Magisters, who are the upper leadership within the Tevinter Imperium society, were convinced by the old gods to physically open the gates of the Golden City in exchange for the ultimate power and glory, according to another section of Threnodies.
No matter their power, their triumphs, the mage lords of Tevinter were men and doomed to die. Then a voice whispered within their hearts, "Shall you surrender your power to time like the beasts of the fields? You are the lords of the earth. Go forth to claim the empty throne of heaven and be gods."
In the Chantry's tale, the Magisters utilize 2/3 of the lyrium in Tevinter, a very valuable but volatile commodity, as well as the blood of hundreds of slaves to achieve the feat of opening the Golden City. This is where blood magic is thought to originate from, taught to the living by the old gods. As the Magisters walked into the city, convinced it'd be empty and abandoned, they found the Maker sitting upon his throne. As a result, the city turned black, and the Magisters were cast away as the first darkspawn that eventually began the First Blight. Does this all sound familiar? If so, that's because it's what Duncan, our dashing Grey Warden commander and guiding hand into the game's universe, refers to immediately after the Canticle. Duncan then segues into the struggling dwarven kingdoms. You see, the Darkspawn taint nearly everything around them, and as their numbers increased, they were thought to seek refuge underground. Not only do the dwarves primarily live beneath the crust, but remember that the Maker imprisoned the dragons deep underground? Isn't it so exciting to make a full circle? Let's take a moment to define some of these terms, though. The Darkspawn are a tainted humanoid race that are largely soulless and unintelligent, which is why they lack coordination outside of a blight. A blight is when Darkspawn have found an old god and corrupted them. This action turns the old god into an archdemon. Archdemons are extremely powerful and intelligent, and as we've understood from the Chantry's stories, the old gods have a knack for telepathic communication. The combination of their communication and being tainted to Darkspawn blood results in their ability to coordinate and organize massive hordes of Darkspawn through a hive mind. Therefore, a blight is only ended by killing the archdemon. Most Thedosian scholars are certain that at least the root of the story is true. After the 7 Magisters went to usurp heaven, the old gods stopped their whispering and Tevinter was thrown into chaos and doubt. The Tevinter people raised their temples and priests of the old gods, ushering in a new era of government and religion. The old god worship was forcefully replaced with the Andrastianism belief we know as organized by the Chantry. There is a lot to talk about when it comes to the Chantry and its divisions, but let's keep it simple here. The Imperial Chantry obviously denies the Darkspawn origin story because, I mean, that's a pretty bad look for them, so fair enough, right? But it's also pretty suspicious that the Orlesian Chantry primarily spread this story around after the Third Blight. At a high level, the Imperial Chantry claims that the Darkspawn have always existed. Therefore, the Blight and Magisters are unrelated. Here is a passage from a book authored by Magister Vivius Agorian on the subject.
There is very little of the infamous 13th verse that we can take literally. It speaks in the voice of the Maker himself. Since he has never deigned to speak to his children directly, we can rest assured it is a work of fiction. There are facts, however, that support it, at least in part. Records remain from the time prior to the First Blight, saying that, yes, 7 Magisters did open a portal to enter the Fade physically. These 7, whose true names we have lost either to legend or deliberate obscurement, did so at the behest of the old gods, who whispered from their ancient prisons. We also know that the Golden City, visible from every part of the Fade by any mage at the time, turned black as night the moment these 7 breached its gates. Everything else, the accusations of sin, the suggestion that these 7 became the first Darkspawn, that they were directly responsible for the blights to come, all of that is conjecture.
Funnily enough, this book was banned by the Orlesian Chantry. So now you have all the background necessary for the ominous quote that kicks off Dragon Age Origins. Incredible, right? But why this verse? Why is this the opening of the game? Let me summarize and leave you with a tiny bit more of Theta's history to complete your understanding of the entire intro cinematic. The subtext and foreshadowing that this brief verse provides is impeccable. The verbiage is foreboding and threatening. It elicits feelings of anger, resentment, and fear. We can extrapolate on those feelings and know that we may soon be confronted with war, division, sinful horrors, and impending doom. The scripture also breaches into lessons of morality and philosophy, which is present in each of the 6 origin stories you are about to choose from. The first hour of Dragon Age Origins is a mixture of warning you and testing you on hubris and greed.
The real dangers of the Fade are preconceptions, careless trust, pride. Keep your wits about you, mage. True tests never end.
Of course, on a more literal front, the canticle foreshadows that you will be dealing with a blight. Following the Threnodies verse, the intro cinematic shows the 5th blight in Theta's history is upon us. As Duncan mentions, every blight has only ever been ended by the order of the Grey Wardens.
Until the Grey Wardens came. Men and women from every race, warriors and mages, barbarians and kings. The Grey Wardens sacrificed everything to stem the tide of darkness and prevail.
It's not an exaggeration to say that Thedas would be obliterated if it weren't for the Grey Wardens and their service to this world. What are the Grey Wardens, you ask? I have to say, I'm loving your questions. I won't go too deep in this video, but the Grey Wardens formed from a group of Imperium soldiers during the First Blight. They renounced the Imperium and aimed to operate neutrally, outside all the political games distracting from the true fight. And so it goes, they called out for anyone of any race or background to join them in ending the Blight. It took roughly 100 more years for the Grey Wardens to prevail. But their bravery and tenacity gave them legendary status across Thedas, and the kingdoms granted them the right of conscription to guarantee sufficient Grey Warden recruits in the future. There have been 3 blights since then, and each time the archdemon was only felled by the blade of a Grey Warden. There are more specifics as to why only Grey Wardens can slay an archdemon, but those are details for another time and maybe another video. That's right, it's been 4 centuries since the previous blight, and our lore finally reaches the present. As you can imagine, it's hard to keep up recruitment numbers when nothing has happened for centuries. In fact, the Doshians largely believe that the blights are over at this point, which is why there are literally only a few Grey Wardens, including Duncan, within the borders of Ferelden, where our Dragon Age Origins journey takes place. As you can imagine, this world needs a new hero, and you are that hero. Or at least one of them. It's a game about family, really. I'm just kidding. Sort of. But whether you are a veteran or new to this game series, I hope you enjoyed my lore breakdown of the Dragon Age Origins introduction. It is my favorite game of all time, so I can't wait to share more about it.